There are 11 tanks, 9 supports, but a whopping 22 DPS, more than both of the tanks and supports combined.
They do not look happy.
So picking the right one matters like picking the right Pokemon for your team. While it's good to have your comfort picks, as it were, a jack of all trades but a master of none is oftentimes better than just a master of one. Today we'll help you make better decisions before combat even starts by discussing the 4 archetypes of DPS heroes and then discussing which hero fits into each category. Also, we'll discuss each hero's niches and some of their best matchups so you can tool yourself to pick more precisely to counter the enemy team comp. Let's start with the archetypes. First off are the sustainers. This is the most well-represented category, defined by their ability to pump out high damage to discourage tank pushes while generally being flexible at controlling the battlefield. If you aren't sure what to pick a sustainer, as they are usable in practically any team comp and generally somewhat harder to counter. Their ults also tend to be the highest damage ults in the game. They're strong against Brawl, weak against Poke, they have multi-target damage types, they have high DPS but lower burst damage generally, medium range, medium survivability, and medium mobility. They are right in the middle, the sweet spot of just being good at everything but not great at any one thing. Typically. Next are Brawls. These are the close range relatives to the sustainers. This category is often used as a bodyguard for your supports or as some extra firepower for your tanks. Rivals has a large overlap in their brawlers and other roles, so the more purebred brawler heroes often end up being swapped to exclusively be a counter pick. These heroes are somewhat easy to pick out from a crowd because their ults either cause a transformation or focus on mobile AoE damage. They're strong against dive, weak against sustain. They too are multi-target damage. They have moderate DPS but good burst damage. But in trade for that, they have lower range, higher survivability, and medium mobility. Next are the flankers. These are the assassins of the backlines and often the most annoying DPS type to fight against, especially if you're a support. These heroes are designed to be alone and get enemies also alone. They excel at movement and their ults tend to be lower damage overall, but they fire out really fast in a small area for often quick picks on small groups of enemies. They're strong against Poke, weak against Brawl. They more focus on single target damage. They have low DPS but higher burst damage overall. They have medium range, low survivability, and high mobility. Their mobility is kind of what makes them what they are. And lastly are the Pokes. These are the quote sniper heroes that trade DPS and mobility for near instant killing threats on ranged enemies. Much like Brawl heroes, these often aren't the team's first pick, but are used when a very specific job needs to be done. Unlike Brawls, however, I believe this hero type to be one of the least understood by the broader community in terms of when it's best to play them, while also this category being the hardest mechanically to excel in, so hopefully this guide ends up helping. They're strong against sustain heroes, weak against flank heroes, they focus on single target damage, they have low overall DPS, but of course high burst damage, they have high range, that kind of defines their whole thing, low survivability, and medium mobility. Now, before we get into this on a hero-by-hero basis, firstly, subscribe and support us on Patreon for bonus stuff, and secondly, I've created a tagging system for every DPS hero for their niche. These tags range from things like they're a flyer, or more basic stuff like splash damage. So rather than needing to come up with unique things to say about each hero, we can show each hero's unique blend of these tags, as most of the time, there's hardly ever a true one-to-one overlap between these tags. Lastly, a correction from last week's video. On the support video, I said that Guardian supports are weak to dive. This is just flat out wrong. It's an error that I didn't catch when reading it back in the script. This is meant to be applied to lifelines, and Guardians are meant to be weak to Poke. I apologize, but hopefully this correction can help out. Let's continue. This is going to be in alphabetical order, so feel free to skip around, starting off with Black Panther, who is an 80-20 flank and brawl. He is almost completely devoid of any range options, yet is able to dive in such a way that often hits multiple targets, which are very brawler-like. Panther is one of the most aggressive heroes in the game, and a good one can make burst damage happen in the blink of an eye. 95% of the time you will be flanking with Black Panther, yet his kit has tools that allows him to perform similar roles and tasks to a brawler with increased HP to boot. Again, even though that's not necessarily his goal. For his niche tags, we have lethal burst and dash attack. Hopefully all of these are somewhat self-explanatory so far. I think the only one that might need to be clarified is dash attack, which just means that he has a really quick quick way of getting out of danger if need be. Like, there's no startup, and it typically does damage, which is a really good tool to have, something that Black Panther makes heavy use of. Next is Black Widow, who is 100% a poke. We always debate whether we should put her in a partial brawl category, but I think Rivals just likes to have their snipers with a bit of close quarter options, which, if true, keeps Widow from being a pure poke. She's of course hit scan, she has a stun, and she also has lethal burst. By the way, while we're talking about lethal burst, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's a one-shot kill, but rather a big burst of damage that can be a one-shot kill with just some mild follow-up or some other forms of buff and so on and so forth. For Panther, it was his combo. For Widow, it's if she has some form of damage boost, right? So it means that they can dish out 250 damage in like a second if they're done correctly. Next is the new kid on the block, Blade, with an 80-20 brawl and sustain. We ended up being pretty close with Blade's predictions last season when we were just sort of guessing about his kit. Blade has a unique anti-heal niche and is slowly being adopted into the player's broader meta picks as a flexible brawler and sustainer. Of course, his niches are he's got anti-heal, he has a counter support ult, which means that his ult is actually not bad to take against support ults. He has increased HP and, just like Black Panther, has a dash attack. Next is Hawkeye, who is an 80-20 poke and sustain. He is a sniper with tools for sustained DPS and an ult type that also matches the sustainers. Hawkeye's biggest struggle is he lacks a lot of niche tags and oftentimes just gets used as a sort of more reliable and sort of higher damage Widow. Many of what we will list here is technically true, but not very good on him for his niches. He has lethal burst, obviously, and he has ranged splash. If anybody has more tags to throw on Hawkeye, let me know in the comments. I'm trying to still figure him out, but I really do think that's it. Next is Hela, who I have as a 50-50 poke and sustain. She exactly steals the best parts of both of her archetypes niche tags to make her both extremely flexible and extremely lethal. However, many heroes have gotten tankier and her damage slightly lower in terms of ranges and such, which have kept her from her previous position as the range hit scan tyrant that she previously was. Of those niches, of course, hit scan. She has iframes, which can be very useful at times. She also has ranged splash, although it's kind of in between. Lethal burst, of course, and she also has a stun. She has a lot of tags here, which of course is what makes her so strong as a multi-tool for many team comps. Number 6, Human Torch, 80-20 sustained flank. Torch's strength is in his wide tooling, yet still reliable burst damage. He's the only flyer that is also partial flank due to his literal dive ability, as well as a shotgun. He's of course a flyer with lingering splash damage, a ranged splash attack, as well as a dash attack, which is pretty unique for him. Also high damage. He's very, very good in the game. If you're trying to learn a DPS hero, he's probably one of the better ones right now. Iron Fist, 80-20 brawl flank. He is the bane of backlines with unique tools for long-term sustain, mobility, and tank busting. I could absolutely see an argument of him being a 50-50, but I think he tends to brawl more than he flanks, and his tools tend to lean that way. This is an analysis of their tools, not necessarily their playstyle, although there is a little bit of overlap in that Venn diagram. Of his niches, he has percentile-based damage, which was what makes him so good at tank busting, iframes, self-healing, which is a pretty rare tag, and also a dash attack, although I don't think it's often thought of that way. Alphabetically, the next iron to follow is the man type with a 50-50 sustain and poke. He's consistent splash damage with medium range wrapped into a flying package with some tools for poking. He's a flyer, he's got ranged splash, he's got a counter support ult, one of the better ults in the game. It's what makes Iron Man so reliable and such a good pick on most cases. Coming up with a new hero that's gotten a lot of buffs and is very scary right now as people are beginning to discover some of her new heights, and that's Magic, who's an 80-20 brawl and flank. There is always a debate whether she should be more of a 50-50 brawl and flank, but I always say that while everyone can flank, Magic thrives right on the edge of the battlefield lines, chasing down targets who are weak from team fights rather than being consistently in things backline like how maybe Spider-Man or Psylocke might be. Although, of course, you're gonna find her there pretty often too. She has lethal burst, iframes, and a dash attack. She's pretty commonly what you're going to expect for niches for brawls and flanks. Next is Mr. Fantastic, who is 100% and I think our only real true brawl representation. He's a hybrid tank with a fondness for grouped up enemies. While Mr. Fantastic struggles in the current meta against dive, or if he's on console, he can be very strong. I've seen some very scary stuff come out of good Mr. Fantastics. He's got increased HP, iframes, team support, as he can also give shields to his allies, and he can also apply slows, which is more often used as an anti-flyer tool. Next is Moonknight with an 80-20 sustain and poke. He has finally received a buff that let him break out of those lower tiers. Moonknight sits in a very scary position, offering many low-risk tools that grant a very high return, better than many of the other heroes right now. He has range splash, recently just got a lethal burst combo. He has construct, which is a unique tag, and he also has a counter support ult. Moonknight's very good right now, very, very scary. Definitely pick him up if you haven't tried him recently. Next is Namor, who is an 80-20 poke and brawl. Namor is weird. His primary wants him to have targets far away, but his abilities thrive when enemies are close to him. Anytime we see a poke plus brawl, like two opposite ends of the spectrum on one hero, they oftentimes kind of end up playing that sort of manifests as a sort of sustainer in many ways. This lets him be flexible on offense or defense, and his rare construct niche alongside of his brawler tools makes him like the perfect tool against dive. He has constructs, also a counter support ult, and he also has iframes, which again, that all plays into his unique kit. Moving into the second half of the list, we have Phoenix, who is an 80-20 sustain and poke. She is weirdly similar to Moonknight in a lot of her niches, but she even has more than what Moonknight has, if that makes sense. Phoenix is very strong right now due to how many options she covers, and realistically, I debated putting her in at least a partial brawl category, but she's got so many things. I think this is probably the best description of her, being that we're trying to stick to two. She has range splash, she's hit scan, she has self-healing iframes, and she's also a pseudo flyer. She can do a lot of things. Phoenix is probably the best hero in the game at the moment. Next is Psylocke, who is an 80-20 flank and sustain. She's a high tier contender due to her balance of burst and sustained damage. Psylocke can fit into most team comps, but does require a skilled hand to see her peak levels of success. She has a lethal burst that's gotten nerfed over time, but it still exists, a dash attack, stealth, which is I think the only hero in the game that has true stealth, and she also is hit scan, which again can help deal with flyers. Scarlet Witch, 80-20, brawl flank. She's designed to be easy to use and as such generally suffers in higher ranks. However, she's good at funneling consistent damage in closer range, and her ult buffs have actually made her a bit more usable as a checkmate to supports and tanks as she's gotten into the higher ranks. She has iframes, range splash, a counter support ult, and a stun. She's got a lot of tools and all of them are pretty darn good. Her damage is just not the greatest overall. Next is Spider-Man, who is a pure 100% flank. Spider-Man's mobility is made into a weapon. He struggles against more coordinated teams or on maps where pits are scarce, but can still do a good job of causing disruption to enemy backlines. He has uniquely extreme mobility, like no one is as fast as Spider-Man, lethal burst, and a stun. Next is Squirrel Girl, who is an 80-20, bear with me, poke and brawl. Is this weird? Does anybody else understand what I'm saying when I say this split? She's hated for her ease of use, which greatly rewards her high splash damage, but she's also pretty good up close, especially to shut down dives. Squirrel Girl is designed to counter deathball straps, and she's also good at focusing down more barrier-focused teams, which I don't often see her get used for, but absolutely should be something considered. She has range splash, of course, that's her whole deal. She has a stun, which is more like a hold you in place rather than a true stun, but she also has lethal burst. She's pretty good at doing like one or two things, and she does those jobs very well. Star-Lord, 80-20, sustain and flank. Star-Lord is a sustain hero with just enough tools to give him the ability to spot flex as a flanker. Arguably, he has one of the better DPS ults in the game as well. Star-Lord has the niche of having iframes, he's also a pseudo flyer, and he's hit scan. Next is Storm, who is a 50-50 brawl and sustain. She's a sustainer DPS that likes to keep with her allies, offering support-like boosts and brawl-like positions. She's a pseudo support, she's also a flyer, and she does have ranged splash, even though it's more of like a piercing. Kind of best to think of it that way. Punisher is next, who is the purest representation of sustain. He is the truest form of sustain with flexible damage and an ability which operates a lot like an immobile shield. Otherwise, Punisher is designed around his ease of use, yet offers higher reward than Scarlet Witch, although you will actually need to aim a little bit. His niche is that he has range splash, increased HP, and he's hit scan. Next is Winter Soldier, who's a 50-50 sustain and brawl. You'll notice that I have him exactly split with Storm, but I'm listing sustain here first because I believe that it's better to focus on Winter Soldier's sustain abilities rather than his brawl abilities, although he's going to do both pretty evenly. He's a hero with anti-dive tools and close-range brawling abilities, yet he has a primary weapon that excels at pretty much any range. Bucky struggles with mobility, but trades it for a very powerful ult and a general multi-purpose kit. He has stuns, slows, a grab, and he also has a lethal burst combo. And last, but certainly not least, is Wolverine, who's an 80-20 brawl and flank. He's the tank buster with strong tools for displacement and close quarter damage and survival. Weirdly, Wolverine is not the strongest option against flank, despite his heavy brawl tag. His kit is purely aimed at being an anti-tank niche and not much else. He has a stun, also a grab, he has percentile-based damage, and he has increased HP. And that's our list. A little bit on the longer side, but I hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, check us out on any of the social medias, links down in the description below to help us out. Bless your faces, and deuces.